Are humans truly the final product of evolution? Or were we once the beginning? This is not just a philosophical question. It is a mystery that once silenced even the most hardened Soviet scientists. In 1969, in a remote, frozen village deep in Siberia, a group of miners uncovered something that history had left no space for. A marble sarcophagus, containing the perfectly preserved body of a young woman. Buried beneath ancient coal layers estimated to be over 800 million years old. Older than complex life. Older than the dinosaurs. Older than any memory humanity has dared to hold. We've long believed that humans first appeared on Earth some 300,000 years ago. But if the girl in the sarcophagus is real, and if the radioactive dating wasn't wrong, then everything we've ever taught about human history may be nothing more than an edited version of something much older. And so, from the frozen Earth, a quiet question rises. Who came first? And if it wasn't us, then what exactly are we? Part 1, The Accidental Excavation in Siberia. September 5, 1969. A gray, bitterly cold morning, no different than countless others, in Rajavkik, a small, isolated village buried deep in the heart of Siberia. Beneath rooftops weighed down by snow, miners set off for another day of work, one no one would remember, and none looked forward to. But that day, what they touched wasn't coal. It wasn't natural rock. It was a piece of history that had never been written. Over 70 meters beneath the frozen earth, a strange sound rang out, breaking the rhythm of pickaxes in stone. One of the miners, Victor, paused. He knelt, brushing aside the fine, dry dust from the spot he had just struck. A surface, smooth, hard, and unnaturally cold, began to emerge. None of them believed their eyes when they saw it. Precisely carved lines etched into pale marble. Not random fractures, not geological patterns, intentional design. And none of them had the language, training, or preparation to accept what they were staring at. They had just uncovered a man-made structure buried within geological strata hundreds of millions of years old. The others were called over. They gathered in silence, staring at the strange object being slowly revealed from the earth. No doors. No religious markings. No trace of known human presence. But every edge, every angle, every proportion spoke of mathematical precision, as if shaped by a civilization that no textbook had ever acknowledged. It was a marble sarcophagus. Roughly 3 meters long, nearly 1 meter tall. Entombed in a coal layer that should have been untouched since long before humanity walked the earth. They stopped. They looked at each other. And then, without orders, without hesitation, they made a decision. They would open it. Just a few hours later, the lid was shifted. Not by trained archaeologists, but by the rough hands of men who had spent their lives in darkness. And in that moment, history, or something far older than history, began to wake up. Part 2, The Girl in the Sarcophagus, Princess Taisun. When the lid of the sarcophagus was finally lifted, a dense wave of cold vapor spilled out. As if a barrier between two worlds had just been torn open. No sound. No words. Only silence, so thick and heavy that every miner froze in place, as if hypnotized by something ancient and unseen. Inside, was not a skeleton. Not the remains of some long-extinct creature. But a young woman. Whole. Untouched. And so strangely beautiful that it defied explanation. There was no sign of decay. Her skin was impossibly white, paler than snow, whiter than even the most extreme cases of albinism. Smooth as porcelain, with no blemishes, no wrinkles, no trace of time's touch. Her dark brown hair flowed gently past her shoulders, curled slightly at the ends, as if it could still move in the wind, despite the unknown ages she had lain there. Her eyes were neither closed nor fully open. She hovered in a state somewhere between sleep and immortality. As if she had never truly died. Her body was suspended in a thick, pinkish liquid. Transparent like crystal, yet viscous like glass warmed by memory. This fluid didn't just preserve her flesh. It seemed to hold intact the soul of an entire forgotten era. She wore a gown so thin, so finely woven, it was almost invisible. A white fabric of impossible delicacy. It didn't rot. It didn't tear. It bore no trace of time. And near her head lay an object no one could identify. A smooth, black metal box, seamless, buttonless, without markings. As if forged from a technology not of this earth. Decades later, when smartphones became commonplace, some of the men who had once stood over that sarcophagus would admit, with a chill in their voices, it looked almost exactly like a device meant for communication. But from the future. No one knew her name. No identification. No artifacts. No trace of origin. Only her presence, which haunted the entire village. Not with horror, but with a silence that was too profound to look away from. They gave her a name, not out of certainty, but out of reverence. Princess Taisun, after the tile district where she had been found. She did not belong to our time. Perhaps. She did not belong to this planet. But her beauty, her mystery, her perfect stillness, opened a door inside the human mind. A realization that history may not be found in the stories we are allowed to learn, but in the truths we were never meant to know. Part 3, The Soviet Response. When word of the sarcophagus, and the so-called immortal woman, escaped the mine, it didn't spread like a rumor shared over drinks at the end of the day. It moved faster. And it reached the ears of men who neither drank in public, nor ever shared stories. Senior officials of the Soviet government. Less than 48 hours after the discovery, a red-painted military helicopter with no insignia descended silently upon the village of Rajavkik, under the cover of night. No warning. No request for permission. No explanation. A special operations unit was deployed, fully armed. And within hours, the entire coal mining site was locked down under a three-tiered steel perimeter. An outer ring to block all civilian access. A middle ring to control the flow of information. And an inner ring, to neutralize anyone who came too close to the sarcophagus. Villagers were evacuated without negotiation. No one was allowed to return. No public statement was released, only a brief, chilling notice. Unidentified biological risk. Do not approach. The miners who had seen the body were separated, one by one. Each was interrogated in sealed, windowless rooms, where words became state property, and memories were treated like files, subject to revision, redaction, or removal. From that moment on, the sarcophagus and the woman within it no longer belonged to the village. She became a classified research subject. A living anomaly that had no place on the accepted map of human knowledge. The sarcophagus was loaded onto a specialized transport vehicle, bound for Novosk, a remote city housing one of the Soviet Union's top biological and military research facilities. But there was a problem, one that no one had anticipated. The sarcophagus was too heavy to move. The solid marble casing, combined with the dense volume of the strange pink fluid encasing her body, made it impossible for any helicopter, even military-grade, to lift it. Faced with this impasse, the research team made a bold and dangerous decision. They would extract the liquid. All of it. A choice that, at the time, seemed scientifically sound. But in hindsight, was the precise moment everything began to change. Part 4, The Transformation and the Shocking Lab Results. When the final drops of the pink liquid were siphoned from the sarcophagus, something intangible, but unmistakable, was lost. From the very moment the crystal-clear fluid left her body, her flawless, luminous skin began to change. It started as a faint gray tint on her fingertips. Then it spread, down her arms, across her neck, and finally, her face. From pearl-like radiance, her complexion dulled into ashen gray, and then slowly deepened into a cold, bluish hue, the unmistakable color of death. She was no longer a mythic presence. She became a physical anomaly that should not exist. Her body was immediately sealed in a sterile chamber. Both the remains and the barrels of pink fluid were transferred to the Special Analysis Center in Novosibirsk. There, a crisis-level task force was assembled. Experts from the Institute of Paleobiology, the Nuclear Physics Bureau, and high-ranking military biotechnologists. All with top-level clearance. All silenced, after seeing the first results. Result 1, carbon-14 dating, total failure. Every sample tested, her gown, the liquid, even the marble itself, returned results beyond measurable range. The equipment couldn't process the data, because each sample exceeded the upper limits of known radiometric dating. The implication? They were hundreds of millions of years old, or more. Result 2, geological analysis of the excavation site. The coal layer where the sarcophagus had been embedded was dated at approximately 800 million years old. Meaning, older than the Cambrian explosion of life. Older than any known multicellular organisms. And certainly, older than the dinosaurs by at least 570 million years. Result 3, analysis of the preservation fluid. The pink liquid, seemingly simple, contained a molecular structure of extreme stability, with properties that shocked the entire team. It prevented cellular oxidation for millions of years. It preserved skin moisture, soft tissue elasticity, and even the natural sheen of hair. It could halt biological decomposition entirely, without the need for refrigeration. No one dared refer to it as a preservative. Instead, in the classified report, one scientist wrote, "It appears to be a form of extraterrestrial biotic serum, capable of sustaining living tissue in indefinite cryogenic suspension." And in those same classified pages, a phrase appeared for the first time in Soviet military archives. Subject is not biologically consistent with any known post-human lineage. In other words, she might not be human. Or at the very least, not human in any way we've ever defined humanity before. Part 5, The Curse Begins, Deaths, Disappearances, and a Spreading Darkness. Some secrets, when unearthed, are not merely buried truths, but open wounds, torn through the very fabric of the world. And after the sarcophagus was opened, things began to happen. Things no science could explain. The first death. Victor, the miner who first uncovered the sarcophagus, was dead within 3 weeks. The official report cited, traffic accident under the influence of alcohol. But according to his wife and son, Victor never drank. Ever since returning from the mine, he had become distant. He startled awake at night. He whispered of dreams, of being buried alive. To his family, his death was not an accident. It was inevitable. As if someone, or something, had marked him. The mysterious disappearance. 1 month later, a second miner vanished while hunting near the old excavation site. His body was found curled by the riverbank, frozen in a posture of terror, despite the unseasonably warm autumn day. There were no wounds. No struggle. Just one unmistakable sign. A fear so overwhelming, it had paralyzed him at the edge of death. The whispered name, the curse of the white coffin. The villagers began to whisper. No one said it aloud. But everyone understood. Those who saw her, don't live long. No one went near the mine anymore. No one dared say the words, the white girl, after 10 p.m. And no one asked what had really been pulled from beneath the earth that day. The growing control. In 1973, 4 years after the discovery, the Soviet military returned to Rejavkik. This time with 3 times the original force. They erected steel barriers, sealed off the entire forest, and posted armed checkpoints along every trail. The old mine was declared a permanently restricted zone due to biological security threats. No one went in. No one came out. And no one knew what was happening within. From that point forward, civil records, geological maps, and even satellite images of the area either vanished, or were blurred. A repeating secret. In a confidential interview from 1987, a geologist who had once worked on the Novosk team quietly admitted, there wasn't just one. 2 more sarcophagi were found near a lake, just a few kilometers from the original site. Both made of white marble. Both containing human-like bodies. And both submerged in the same pink liquid. And ever since then, people started disappearing. Without warning. Without explanation. The question now was no longer, who is she? But rather, why was the government so afraid that they buried an entire forest to hide her? Part 6, The Other Coffins, a deleted chapter of prehistoric civilization. If only one sarcophagus had been found, it might have been a mistake. If there were 2, perhaps a strange coincidence. But when 3 sarcophagi were discovered, all carved in the same style, all containing the same pink preservation fluid, all housing perfectly preserved bodies, they could no longer be dismissed as isolated relics. They were evidence of something that once existed and had since been erased. The nameless lake, 2 more tombs. In the summer of 1973, during a classified geological survey near the original mine, a Soviet special unit uncovered 2 additional marble sarcophagi, buried near a lake, hidden beneath dense forest overgrowth. No civilians were present. No media coverage followed. All reports were stamped top secret, for Ministry of Interior use only. 3 beings, 3 different forms. According to a rare account from a former Soviet researcher who later defected to Switzerland in 1991, the new bodies found did not resemble Princess Tayasum. One was a man, with silver-white hair and eyes that remained open. Pupils vertically slit, like those of a reptile. The third body defied classification. Skin of silvery gray, hairless, with 6 fingers on each hand. And biological markers unrecognizable by any known human genome. All 3 were submerged in the same pink fluid. Odorless, non-evaporating, and resistant to decomposition, even in open air. The question of an erased civilization. Scientists who later fled the Soviet system spoke anonymously, saying, if these are human, then they are not the humans we know. And if they are not human, then who created them? They began to refer to the discovery with a term that carried both reverence and fear. The pre-human epoch. A civilization that may have once developed advanced biotechnology far beyond our own. Mastered preservation techniques unknown to any modern science. And then, vanished, leaving behind nothing but 3 marble coffins. Why does no one know? Because everyone involved in the second excavation was forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. Some were transferred to remote border outposts overnight. Others simply vanished from all administrative records. Every report, every photograph, every specimen, including the barrels of pink fluid, was purged from national archives. As if someone, or some system, wasn't just hiding the truth, but protecting something far greater. The question slowly shifted. It was no longer, could this be real? It became, if this is real, why are we not allowed to know? Part 7, Were Humans Truly the First? Theories that collapse modern history. We were raised to believe that Homo sapiens is the pinnacle of evolution, the final outcome of millions of years of natural selection. But what if we are not the beginning, only the continuation? What if human history, as we know it, is merely a rewritten chapter? penned over the ashes of pages that were deliberately burned? This is no longer a philosophical question. It is a scientific hypothesis quietly cracking the foundations of accepted truth. Theory 1: a pre-human civilization once walked the earth. Independent archaeologists and paleobiologists are starting to ask: could an advanced civilization have existed hundreds of millions of years ago, only to be wiped out by a global extinction event? Their possible remnants? 3 white marble sarcophagi, buried in geological layers from before the Cambrian explosion. A biological fluid that surpasses the capabilities of any known modern technology. Preserved bodies of beings that resemble humans, but are undeniably not human, nor animal. If this is true, then we are not the first species to build, to preserve, or to reach for the stars. We are merely inheritors of a legacy we were never meant to remember. Theory 2: they did not come from Earth. A more radical theory, once dismissed but now gaining serious traction, suggests the beings in the coffins are not ancient humans, but biological travelers from another star system. Consider their unique features. Skin so pale it reflects light. Skeletal structures that deviate from known human anatomy. Flawless adaptation to extreme cold environments. Exobiologists are beginning to ask: could this be the first true evidence of a temporarily resident extraterrestrial species? From this perspective, the sarcophagus is not a tomb, but a biological sleep chamber. A cryopod designed to preserve life during interstellar journeys. And if that's the case, the question is no longer, where did she come from? But, why did she come here, and how many others like her have walked this earth? Theory 3: history has been deliberately rewritten. There is one final possibility, far more terrifying than any creature that ever slept beneath the soil. Human history, as we've learned it, has been deliberately restructured. Not because of missing data, but because the truth is too vast, too destabilizing, to be permitted. Proponents of the erased Genesis theory believe superancient civilizations did leave behind evidence. From submerged pyramids to celestial maps carved in forgotten stone. But these traces were buried, distorted, or disconnected. Not by time or nature, but by those who control the global narrative of knowledge. Because if it became known that humans were not the first intelligent species, then everything, our religions, our science, our power structures, would collapse like a tower of sand. The silence that screams. No media ever reported what happened in Reykjavik. No official record was released by the Soviet Union, or by Russia, decades later. But perhaps it is this absolute silence that makes the theories more terrifying than any confirmed truth. Sometimes, what the world refuses to say says more than we are ready to hear. Part 8: Symbols, Language, and the Truth Sealed Away, the Clues That Remain. Truth never disappears entirely. It merely hides. In forms most of humanity has forgotten how to read. And sometimes, what is erased from history books continues to live, etched in stone, encoded in symbols, or whispered through recurring dreams across generations. The carvings on the sarcophagus walls. Though no recognizable script was found, the surface of all 3 sarcophagi was marked with deep geometric engravings. Deliberate, precise, and impossibly uniform. Some researchers described them as an ancient language of geometry, where every line, every square, every arc carries meaning not to be spoken, but to be sensed, intuitively, almost spiritually. Similar patterns have been reported before. On a stone panel in Abydos, Egypt, bearing non-hieroglyphic symbols. In the undeciphered carvings of the Indus Valley, which remain a linguistic enigma. And, most strangely, on a petroglyph slab in Bolivia, halfway across the world from Siberia. With markings nearly identical in structure. Could it be that ancient civilizations were never separate? That they were once linked, not by land or war, but by a unified philosophy. That we have since lost. The black box beside her head, near the head of Princess Tyasun's body, was an object. A small black metallic cube, seamless and featureless. No buttons. No ports. No inscriptions visible to the naked eye. But under ultraviolet light, a network of faint glowing lines appeared. Not letters, but a pattern. When compared to fragments recovered from the Roswell incident, 1947, and the mysterious Nazca stone carvings in Peru, independent researchers noticed chilling parallels. Rhythmic structure. A repeating cycle based on the number 12. Embedded mathematical harmonics. Could this be a nonverbal language, a system of wave-coded communication? A linguistic technology that predates and surpasses the alphabetic mind? The leaked file, codename V_Sangue_3. In 1992, a document leaked from the Russian military archives. Its title: V_Sangue_3, Report on Unknown Biological Preservation Compound. It described the properties of the pink fluid in technical detail. But at the bottom of the final page, in nearly erased handwriting, was a chilling annotation. Subspecies, not of Earth. Shortly after this report began circulating in select Western scientific circles, the original file vanished from all digital databases. Printed copies were confiscated. And one of the scientists tied to the leak died unexpectedly of what was officially deemed a sudden stroke. Recurring dreams and the whisper in sleep. Another strange phenomenon emerged among the surviving villagers of Rejavkik. In the years following the 1969 discovery, many began to report the same dream. Repeating, identical, unexplainable. A room filled with soft pink light. A woman floating, suspended in midair. And a voice. Not heard through ears, but felt deep inside the chest. Whispering. They won't let me wake up. Perhaps these symbols were never meant to be understood in the conventional sense. Perhaps their purpose is not to inform, but to awaken. Something ancient. Something buried inside the collective memory of the human species. Part 9, What if she wakes up? And why they don't want that to happen. A body can sleep for millions of years. But a mind does not sleep. It waits. It listens. And perhaps it remembers everything. A question more terrifying than death. What if Princess Tyasun was never dead, but simply asleep? All available scientific evidence points in a single, chilling direction. No sign of decomposition. Cellular structures still engaged in low-level regeneration, consistent with biological preservation states described in theoretical models of spacebound cryogenic sleep. Scientists refer to this condition as cryogenic homeostasis, a form of suspended animation, where consciousness is paused, but life is never extinguished. In other words, she can wake up. And perhaps she already is. Why prevent her awakening? No one invests millions into a triple-layered military lockdown just to guard a corpse. No one deletes geological records, destroys physical samples, and silences witnesses unless they fear something will happen. Some researchers believe if she wakes, she won't just carry the memory of a forgotten civilization. She will carry the knowledge of what destroyed it. A warning from a distant past. A leaked internal memo from a 1981 research project at the Novosibirsk Institute included a final, handwritten note in Russian. If she speaks, humanity will never be the same. What are they so afraid of? The revelation of a superior ancient species? A form of knowledge that could erase the foundations of religion, morality, and social order? Or worse, that she is not a messenger at all, but a trigger? a being, or a mechanism? What if the sarcophagus isn't a tomb? What if the liquid isn't just preservation fluid? What if it's part of a biological system, an alien interface? Then she is not merely a person, but a component in something far larger. A fragment of collective intelligence. A living archive. Holding memories, data, and history. From a world that once was. And was erased. If that world was destroyed, then the final, inevitable question is, what destroyed it? No one wants to know. Or no one is allowed to know. She is still being held. Somewhere. In a bunker that doesn't appear on any map. In a facility with no name, no signage, no echoes. Not to protect her, but to protect the world from her. Part 10, Final Reflection. If truth wakes before we do, are we ready to face it? We have dug deep into the earth. For fuel, for minerals, for fossils. But what was uncovered in Rejavkik in 1969 was not a resource. It was a memory. Sealed away from a world that came before. A world not found in textbooks. Not taught in classrooms. Not indexed by Google. And never broadcast on any official channel. We live in an age where every piece of information seems accessible. And yet, the deepest truths are protected. By silence. The girl in the sarcophagus is no longer a preserved body. She is a question. One that no one dares to answer. If she truly came from a prehistoric civilization, our history must be rewritten. If she is an extraterrestrial being, humanity is no longer the center of the universe. And if she is still alive, then we are living beside an ancient intelligence. Watching quietly. Waiting patiently. Science tells us, question everything. But when that questioning is not allowed to lead to discovery, it breeds only controlled fear. So the final question isn't for the history books. It's for each of us. Are we ready to know what an entire civilization tried to hide? Or would we rather keep sleeping while truth quietly begins to wake up? You've just experienced an episode from the Veil of Mystery series. If what you heard made you think, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to join us in uncovering truths that were never meant to be forgotten.